Hey guys, tonight we're taking a journey back in time, far from the hum of modern life and the glow of your screens, to a quiet corner of medieval Japan. Imagine waking, not to an alarm, but to the gentle chirping of crickets fading with the dawn and the soft rustle of straw mats as your family begins to stir. You're not in your comfy bed. Instead, you're on a futon rolled out directly onto the tatami floor of a simple wooden house. The morning light just beginning to filter through paper screens. There's a certain earthy scent in the air, a blend of damp soil, woods, and something vaguely fomented, perhaps miso. You might think this sounds idyllic, but let's be honest. You probably wouldn't survive a week without your phone charger, let alone the absence of flush toilets. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're up for it, drop a comment below with where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always wild to see how far these sleepy historical adventures travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You feel a subtle shift in the air. A coolness that signals the night's embrace is loosening its grip. Through the thin walls of your home, constructed from timber and plaster, with sliding shoji screens made of paper and wood, you can already hear the first tentative sounds of the village waking up. It's not a cacophony, but a gradual unfolding of daily life. The distant crow of a rooster, a sound that has marked dawn for millennia, cuts through the pre-dawn quiet. Then, perhaps, the soft thump-thump of someone pounding rice in a nearby household, preparing the staple for the day ahead. You might hear the gentle creak of a well pulley as one of your neighbors begins fetching water for their morning needs, or the low murmur of voices as families begin their quiet routines. One mainstream historical fact about this period, often overlooked when we think of samurai and shoguns, is just how agrarian Japanese society was. The vast majority of the population, easily over 80%, lived in small villages like this one, tied directly to the rhythms of the land, primarily rice cultivation. Your very existence, your daily sustenance, is utterly dependent on the success of the harvest, and every person in the village plays a role, from the youngest child to the eldest grandparent. It's a collective effort, a communal dance with nature that has been honed over centuries. A quirky tidbit that often surprises people is that even in these humble homes, cleanliness was highly valued. While you might not have a modern bathroom, you're expected to maintain a certain level of personal hygiene. Your sleeping futon, for instance, is rolled up and stored away each morning, creating an open space for daily activities and allowing the tatami mats beneath to air out. This practice wasn't just about tidiness, it was also a practical measure against pests and dampness. Imagine trying to keep a tiny home spotless without the benefit of vacuum cleaners or chemical sprays. It was a constant battle, a quiet war against dust, mildew, and the occasional spider. Some historians still argue whether the obsessive neatness, often associated with later Japanese culture, truly had its roots in these practical concerns of medieval village life, or if it was more deeply tied to spiritual beliefs about purity. Either way, you're not getting out of bed and just leaving your futon strewn about. That would simply not do. You'd be the talk of the village, and not in a good way, as the light strengthens. You notice the subtle play of shadows on the paper, screens shifting from a dull gray to a warm, diffused white. The air, though still cool, begins to lose its nighttime bite. You push yourself up, feeling the slight stiffness in your limbs from sleeping on the relatively firm futon, a stark contrast to your memory of a soft mattress. Your eyes adjust to the soft light, and you can make out the simple interior of your home. A few low tables, perhaps a small shrine in one corner, and the ever-present Irori, a sunken hearth in the center of the main room, its faint embers a promise of warmth and cooked food to come. This hearth, you know, will be the beating heart of your home throughout the day. As you roll up your futon and carefully place it in its designated storage nook, your attention naturally drifts towards the Irori, the sunken hearth in the center of your main living space. This isn't just a fireplace. It's the heart of your home, the nucleus around which your family's entire day will revolve. In the dim light, you can see the faint glow of embers from last night, carefully banked to preserve the precious heat and avoid the hassle of rekindling a full fire from scratch every morning. It's a testament to the efficient, resourceful way of life here, you might think. Why not just have a stove? But the Irori serves so many more purposes. A mainstream historical fact about the Irori is its multifaceted utility. It wasn't merely for warmth, especially in the mild climate of many Japanese villages. It was the primary cooking surface, where pots of rice would simmer, vegetables would be stewed, and fish might be grilled over the open flame. Above the pit, you'd see a jizai kagi, an adjustable hook and chain mechanism, allowing you to raise or lower cooking pots over the fire, controlling the heat with surprising precision. It's a simple piece of engineering, but incredibly effective. And you've seen your grandmother use it with an almost unconscious grace, adjusting the height by memory and intuition. But beyond cooking, the Irori also played a crucial role in maintaining the structural integrity of your home. A quirky tidbit, the constant smoke from the Irori, while perhaps a bit irritating to modern eyes and lungs, actually acted as a natural preservative for the wooden beams and thatch roof. The creosote from the smoke would coat the wood, making it more resistant to insects and rot. So, while you might occasionally cough from a stray puff of smoke, you're also inadvertently contributing to the longevity of your dwelling. It's a medieval form of pest control and structural maintenance, all rolled into one smoky package. Historians still argue whether the preserving effect was an intentional design element from the outset or a beneficial side effect discovered through generations of use. Either way, it works, and your house, built generations ago, stands strong. You watch as your mother, or perhaps an elder sibling, kneels by the Irori, carefully tending to the embers. They use a small pair of iron tongs, called hibashi, to coax the glowing coals back to life, adding a few small pieces of kindling. The wood crackles softly, and a thin plume of smoke curls upwards, disappearing into the karamado, the smoke hole in the ceiling above the hearth. There's no chimney in the modern sense. The smoke is simply allowed to drift up and out, carrying with it not just the scent of burning wood, but also the aroma of whatever might be cooking or brewing. The warmth begins to spread through the room, a gentle comfort against the lingering morning chill. You might sit nearby, perhaps on a cushion, enjoying the heat radiating from the open pit. It's a communal warmth, drawing everyone in the family together, a silent invitation to gather and begin the day's quiet conversations. Your cat, if you have one, is likely already curled up as close as safely possible to the glowing coals, enjoying the prime real estate. Even the household dog might be stretched out, dreaming of scraps from the day's meals. The Viarori is also a silent witness to the passage of seasons. In the deep winter, it's a source of essential survival, keeping the cold at bay. In the height of summer, the fire is kept smaller, just enough for cooking, its warmth a necessary inconvenience. You've seen your grandfather, on particularly cold nights, pull a blanket over a low table set around the orori, creating a katatsu, a heated table where everyone can sit with their legs tucked under the blanket, sharing warmth and stories. It's a simple luxury, a profound comfort born from necessity. This ingenuity, this ability to adapt and utilize what's available, is a hallmark of life in this medieval village. The scent of wood smoke, so pervasive and comforting, will cling to your clothes, your hair, even your skin. A subtle reminder of the hearth that nourishes and protects your family. It's a scent that smells like home. With the Irori now providing a gentle warmth and the promise of a cooked meal, your thoughts, and indeed your stomach, turn to breakfast. Unlike the elaborate multi-course affairs you might imagine for nobility, the morning meal in your medieval Japanese village is simple yet nourishing. There's no rush to grab a sugary cereal or a hurried coffee. Instead, the focus is on sustenance, preparing you for a day of demanding physical labor. You know the drill. It will primarily consist of rice, perhaps a bowl of miso soup, and some pickled vegetables. A mainstream historical fact about the medieval Japanese diet is its remarkable simplicity and reliance on a few core ingredients. Rice was, without question, the undisputed king of the table. It wasn't just a side dish, it was the main event, the very foundation of every meal. For breakfast, you'd typically have a bowl of plain steamed white rice, or sometimes brown rice if white rice was scarce or you preferred the added fiber. This wasn't the fluffy, perfectly separated rice you might find in a modern Japanese restaurant. It was often a bit stickier, more robust, designed to provide sustained energy. You might even see some of your family members adding a little hot water to last night's leftover rice, making a kind of warming gruel to ease into the day. Now, for a quirky tidbit, while we think of miso soup as a ubiquitous part of Japanese cuisine today, its prominence in medieval village breakfasts wasn't quite as universal as you might imagine. While fermented soybeans miso were certainly known and used, the specific preparation and daily consumption as a morning soup evolved over time. Early versions of miso soup were often thicker, almost like a stew, and might contain a wider variety of foraged greens or root vegetables, depending on the season and availability. It certainly wasn't the delicate, clear broth you might slurp down today. You might find a few scraps of leftover vegetables from last night's dinner floating in your morning bowl, or perhaps some wild herbs gathered from the nearby hills. It's a humble, savory start, designed to hydrate and warm you from the inside out. Historians still argue whether the availability of specific ingredients, like high-quality white rice or varied vegetables, truly dictated the social standing of a family within the village. Or if communal sharing and resourcefulness blurred those lines more than written records suggest. What's clear, however, is that everyone ate and everyone needed to be energized for the work ahead. As the rice cooks over the arori, its gentle steaming fills the small house with a comforting aroma. Your mother might prepare the miso soup, stirring the thick, savory paste into hot water, perhaps adding a few pieces of sliced daikon radish or some thinly chopped green onions if they were harvested recently. The pickling of vegetables, or sukamono, is another vital skill, a way to preserve food for the long stretches between harvests. For breakfast, you might have a few slivers of pickled radish or cucumber, their salty, tangy crunch providing a welcome contrast to the soft rice. There's no elaborate spread, no dozens of different dishes. This is efficient, practical eating. You sit cross-legged on the tatami mat around a low table, perhaps sharing a single large bowl of rice that everyone serves themselves from, or individual, smaller bowls. If the family is prosperous, there's a quiet reverence to the meal. It's eaten without much chatter, a time for contemplation and preparation for the day. You learn from a young age not to waste a single grain of rice, understanding implicitly the immense effort that goes into cultivating it. Every mouthful is savored, every bite a connection to the land and the labor that sustains you. The warmth of the rice, the saltiness of the miso, the slight acidity of the pickles. It's a symphony of simple flavors, preparing your body for the physical demands that are about to begin. And honestly, after a night on the futon, this warm, starchy goodness hits different. No complaints here, with breakfast settled and the quiet warmth of the airori still clinging to your senses. The real work of the day begins. For most in your medieval Japanese village, this means one thing: the rice paddies. You feel a familiar, almost instinctual pull towards the fields that lie just beyond the cluster of homes. This isn't just farming. It's a way of life, a deep connection to the earth that defines your very existence. A mainstream historical fact about medieval Japan is that rice was not just food, but also effectively currency. Taxes were often paid in rice, and wealth was measured by the amount of rice land a family owned or could cultivate. The entire economic and social structure revolved around this single, precious grain. So, when you head out to the paddies, you're not just going to work. You're going to the heart of the village's prosperity, or indeed, its struggle. You slip on your straw sandals, perhaps tie a simple cloth around your head to protect against the sun, and join your family members and neighbors who are also making their way to the fields. The path is well worn, a narrow track winding between low earthen dikes that separate one paddy from another. The air outside is crisp, carrying the scent of damp soil and growing things. Depending on the season, the work will vary dramatically. If it's spring, you're likely involved in the arduous task of transplanting young rice seedlings. Imagine standing for hours, knee-deep in cool, muddy water, bending repeatedly to carefully place each tiny sprout into the prepared soil. It's back-breaking, repetitive work, but there's a quiet rhythm to it, a collective effort where everyone moves in a synchronized, almost meditative dance. These rice paddies, it wasn't just about waiting for rain. Villages often had intricate networks of irrigation canals, diverting water from nearby rivers or streams to flood the paddies at precisely the right time. Maintaining these canals was a communal responsibility, requiring constant effort to prevent blockages or breaches. You might spend part of your day clearing debris, shoring up banks, or adjusting small wooden sluice gates to direct the flow. It's a low-tech marvel of hydraulic engineering, ensuring that every drop of precious water reached its destination. Historians still argue whether the complex organization required for such large-scale irrigation fostered a strong sense of communal identity, or if it also led to frequent disputes over water rights. Both are probably true, depending on the season and the people involved. As you work, the sounds of the village slowly recede, replaced by the squelch of mud beneath your feet, the gentle lapping of water, and the occasional call of a bird. Might hear the distant ring of a blacksmith's hammer or the faint sound of children's voices from the village. But out here, in the expansive, shimmering fields, it's mostly just the sounds of nature and human effort. You might even see a water buffalo, if your village is prosperous enough to own one, slowly plowing a field, its immense strength making lighter work of turning the heavy soil. Most often, however, it's human power that does the job. The sun begins to climb higher, and you feel its warmth on your back, sweat beads on your forehead, but you keep going, driven by the collective purpose. You understand implicitly that the effort you put in today directly translates to the food on your table tomorrow. There's a quiet satisfaction in seeing the rows of newly planted seedlings, perfectly aligned, stretching across the water-filled fields. It's a testament to human perseverance and the unwavering hope for a bountiful harvest. And let's be honest, standing in that cool mud, you're probably thinking, well, at least I don't have to deal with email. As you toil in the rice paddies, the intricate web of village life becomes even more apparent. You're not just an individual working a plot of land. You're a single thread in a tightly woven tapestry where community dynamics are paramount. Every action, every decision has ripple effects through the small cluster of homes and fields that make up your world. Mainstream historical fact about medieval Japanese villages is that they operated on a strong principle of collective responsibility and mutual aid, often formalized through local rules and customs. This wasn't just a nice idea, it was essential for survival. Tasks like repairing irrigation canals, remember those from the last section, building new homes, or preparing for festivals, were all communal efforts. You'd see families lending tools, sharing labor, and offering support during times of illness or hardship. Your own family might help a neighbor transplant rice seedlings one week, knowing they'll return the favor during your harvest. It's a self-sustaining ecosystem of reciprocal favors, vital in a world without extensive government welfare or insurance. You might notice the subtle cues that indicate the village's social hierarchy. Even within this seemingly egalitarian system, there might be a headman or nanushi, often chosen from one of the more established or prosperous families, who helps mediate disputes and organizes communal projects. You might see the respect afforded to the village elders, whose wisdom and experience are invaluable, particularly in matters of farming and tradition. While everyone works, some families might own more land or possess specialized skills, giving them a slightly different standing. It's not a rigid caste system, but a nuanced pecking order based on a blend of lineage, wealth, and contribution. A quirky tidbit about this communal living is the concept of yuri, or informal gatherings. These weren't just social calls. They were crucial for decision-making. Villagers would often meet in someone's home, or perhaps under a large tree, to discuss everything from irrigation schedules to local disputes. Imagine trying to solve complex problems with your neighbors, but without the benefit of Zoom calls or formal minutes. It relied heavily on oral agreements, personal trust, and the subtle pressure of community expectation. Historians still argue whether these informal systems were genuinely democratic for all villagers, or if they mostly served to reinforce the power of a few influential families. Regardless, they were the engine of local governance, and you'd better believe your father spent many evenings at such discussions, often returning home with a fresh consensus or a new task for the morrow. As you pause to wipe sweat from your brow, you might exchange a few words with a neighboring farmer. Perhaps you discuss the weather, the condition of the seedlings, or a minor problem with a shared tool. These brief interactions, punctuated by shared grunts of effort, reinforce the bonds that hold the community together. There's an unspoken understanding, a shared destiny tied to the success of the harvest and the well-being of every family. Resilience and cooperation are the true virtues here. Even small acts, like simply walking through the village, reinforce this sense of collective life. You pass by other homes, hearing the sounds of daily chores, the murmur of voices, the occasional clatter of pottery. You know the faces of everyone you see, their families, their struggles, their triumphs. Back when times get tough, it's a trade-off, but in this world, the support outweighs the scrutiny. And honestly, it's refreshing not to have to pretend you're interested in what Karen from accounting did last weekend, while the adults are engrossed in the back-breaking labor of the paddies. The younger members of your medieval Japanese village aren't simply idling away their hours. Children's play and learning are intricately woven into the fabric of daily life. There are no dedicated schools in the modern sense, at least not for most village children, and direct participation. A mainstream historical fact is that education in this period was largely practical and vocational, especially for those not destined for a monastic life or a noble court. Girls would learn the skills necessary for running a household, cooking, weaving, mending clothes, and tending to younger siblings. Boys would follow their fathers into the fields, learning the nuances of farming, tool maintenance, and understanding the seasons. It was an apprenticeship from birth, a hands-on curriculum taught by the very rhythm of existence. You wouldn't find trigonometry on the syllabus, but you'd certainly master the art of knowing when the rice plants were thirsty. You imagine games of tag among the houses, using the winding paths and hidden corners as your playground. These weren't just innocent pastimes. They were often subtly preparing you for future responsibilities. Pebbles in patterns, simulating rice planting. A quirky tidbit about play is the importance of traditional folk games, many of which involved collective participation rather than individual competition. Think of games like kendama, toy, or otetama, a juggling game with small beanbags. These games fostered dexterity, concentration. You might spend hours by the stream trying to catch small fish with your bare hands, or exploring the nearby forest for edible plants and interesting stones. Historians still argue whether the emphasis on group games over individual ones contributed to the strong communal bonds seen in medieval Japanese villages, or if it simply reflected the lack of resources for mass-produced individual toys. But learning wasn't always play. As you grow older, your responsibilities increase. You're no longer just observing. You're actively participating. If you're a girl, you'd be helping your mother with preparing meals, fetching water, grinding grain, and mastering the complex art of weaving cloth from hemp or cotton. The precision and patience required for these tasks are taught with gentle but firm guidance. If you're a boy, you'd be helping your father in the fields, carrying tools, learning to identify weeds, and understanding the subtle signs of healthy crops. You'd learn about the different types of soil, the optimal times for planting and harvesting, and the proper way to repair a broken tool. Every chore is a lesson, every interaction a teaching moment. There's no formal classroom, but the entire village is your school. You learn about respect for elders, the importance of hard work, and the consequences of laziness through daily example. You learn the local legends and stories from your grandparents during long evenings by the Irori, absorbing the history and values of your people. It's an immersive, lifelong education, deeply rooted in the practicalities of survival and the traditions of your community. And honestly, while you might sometimes wish for a break, there's a certain satisfaction in knowing that what you're learning today directly contributes to your family's well-being tomorrow. Beyond the essential work of farming, a medieval Japanese village, no matter how humble, also relies on a variety of specialized crafts and trades to meet its needs. Not everyone can spend all their time in the paddies. Some individuals possess skills that are crucial for the community's self-sufficiency, turning raw materials into tools, clothes, and everyday necessities. A mainstream historical fact is that while the majority were farmers, villages often had resident artisans or craftsmen who provided essential services. Think of the blacksmith, whose hammering echoes might occasionally drift from the edge of the village. This isn't just someone who makes decorative ironwork. This is the person who forges and repairs the very tools that enable farming hoes, sickles, and plows. Without the blacksmith, the entire agricultural cycle would grind to a halt. You might occasionally see them at work, their muscles rippling, sparks flying as they shape red-hot metal. It's a powerful, almost primal sight, a testament to human ingenuity. Then there's the carpenter, responsible for building and maintaining the wooden houses, bridges, and gates that make up the village infrastructure. Their skills are passed down through generations, a deep understanding of wood joinery and the art of constructing sturdy, earthquake-resistant structures. You might watch them meticulously planing a beam or fitting together complex, interlocking joints, a quiet precision in every movement. It's a bit like watching a Zen master at work. If that Zen master was also really good with a saw, a quirky tidbit, even in a small village, you might find a designated paper maker, or at least someone skilled in producing paper from mulberry bark. Remember the shoshi screens on your house? They need paper. Writing even simple household accounts or official notices requires paper. This wasn't factory-produced paper. It was a laborious, artisanal process, turning fibrous plant material into thin, durable sheets. It involved soaking, beating, and pressing, a true craft that often gets overlooked when we think of medieval life. Historians still argue whether the widespread availability of even basic paper in these villages contributed to a higher general literacy rate than in comparable European societies of the same period, or if the primary use remained limited to official records and specialized religious texts. Beyond these core trades, other skills would be present. Perhaps a potter, shaping clay into bowls, jars, and cooking vessels, essential items for every household. You might even have someone who specializes in weaving straw into mats, baskets, and the crucial straw sandals waraji that everyone wears. These artisans don't just work for pay. They're integral members of the community, often bartering their skills for food or other services. You might bring a broken hoe to the blacksmith, offering a portion of your rice harvest in return for its repair. The sounds of these crafts become part of the village soundscape, the rhythmic thump-thump of the weaver's loom, the soft clink of the potter's tools, the occasional bang from the blacksmith's forge. These aren't loud, intrusive noises. They are the sounds of productivity, of ingenuity, and of a community supporting itself. You understand that your comfort, your safety, and your ability to farm are directly dependent on the skills of these individuals. It reinforces the idea that everyone has a role. Every skill contributes to the collective well-being. It's a beautiful, intricate dance of interdependence, far removed from the anonymous, specialized economy of the modern world. You might not have an Amazon Prime account, but you have a local craftsman who knows exactly how to fix your tools. And that's a pretty good deal as the sun climbs towards its zenith. Casting shorter shadows across the rice paddies, the rhythmic work begins to slow. It's time for the midday respite and food, a crucial break that recharges bodies and minds for the afternoon's labors. Unlike the structured lunch breaks of modern offices, this pause is often informal, dictated by the needs of the body and the flow of the work. A mainstream historical fact is that midday meals, much like breakfast, were typically simple and focused on sustenance. You wouldn't find elaborate bento boxes or a trip to a nearby noodle shop. Instead, it would often be onigiri or rice balls, perhaps wrapped in a bit of dried seaweed if available, or seasoned with salt. These were practical, portable, and easily consumed in the fields without needing extensive preparation or utensils. You might also have some leftover pickled vegetables from breakfast, or perhaps a handful of wild greens gathered from the edge of the paddy. It's the ultimate grab-and-go meal, medieval style. Imagine sitting down on the edge of a dike, your legs dangling into the cool water of the paddy, or perhaps finding a shaded spot under a nearby tree. The air is warm, thick with the buzzing of insects and the gentle rustle of the rice stalks. You unwrap your onigiri, feeling the satisfying firmness of the packed rice. There's a quiet camaraderie as everyone in your work group takes their break, eating their simple fare without much chatter. The silence is broken only by the sounds of nature and the occasional contented sigh. This isn't a social event. It's a necessary refueling, a brief moment of rest before the work resumes. A quirky tidbit about these midday meals is the ingenuity in keeping food fresh without refrigeration. While onigiri can be eaten at room temperature, sometimes they might be wrapped in specific leaves, like bamboo leaves, which have natural antimicrobial properties, helping to keep the rice from spoiling as quickly. This wasn't just about taste. It was about preventing illness and making sure that the precious food didn't go to waste. Imagine trying to pack a sandwich for lunch without a cooler in the summer heat, and you get a sense of the challenges involved. Historians still argue whether the widespread use of fermentation and pickling in the Japanese diet was primarily a culinary preference or a practical necessity born from the need for food preservation in a hot, humid climate. It's probably a bit of both. You might take a long drink from a bamboo dipper, scooping cool water from a nearby well or stream. This isn't bottled water, so you trust in the purity of your village's water sources, a trust often based on generations of experience. The coolness of the water is a refreshing counterpoint to the warmth of the sun and the effort of the morning. It's a moment to simply be, to let your muscles relax, and to feel the gentle breeze on your skin. There's no strict clock watching here. The length of the break might vary slightly depending on the urgency of the work or the heat of the day. But eventually, a quiet signal passes through the group, a nod, a stretch, a clearing of throats. And everyone begins to stir, ready to return to the fields. You brush any stray grains of rice from your clothes, stand up, feeling the slight protest from your knees and back, and prepare to re-enter the rhythmic dance of planting or weeding. The midday respite, short as it is, has done its job, offering a brief period of recovery before the afternoon shift begins. And let's face it, even in medieval Japan, a little food coma after lunch is a universal experience as you resume your work in the rice paddies. The afternoon sun beating down, you become even more acutely aware of the lifeblood of this village, water. The intricate system of water management challenges isn't just about getting water to the fields. It's a constant, vital struggle, demanding ingenuity, cooperation, and vigilance, a mainstream historical fact about Japanese agriculture, particularly rice cultivation, is its absolute dependence on sophisticated irrigation. Rice paddies require careful flooding and drainage at specific points in the growing cycle. Too much water at the wrong time or too little can spell disaster for the harvest. This isn't a simple matter of rainfall. It's about controlling and distributing water from natural sources like rivers, streams, and springs, often over considerable distances, to ensure every paddy gets its share. You might spend part of your afternoon not planting or weeding, but actively participating in water management. This could involve clearing debris from the main irrigation channels, ensuring a clear flow. Fallen leaves, branches, or even small stones can impede the flow, and a blocked channel means thirsty paddies downriver. You might also be tasked with opening or closing small wooden sluice gates, carefully directing the water from a main canal into smaller feeder ditches that supply individual family plots. It's a delicate balance, a constant negotiation with nature. A quirky tidbit related to water management is the communal effort involved in its protection. It wasn't uncommon for villages to have specific rules or even informal water guards, whose job it was to monitor the flow and ensure fair distribution, especially during dry spells. Disputes over water rights were surprisingly common and could escalate quickly. Imagine arguing with your neighbor about who gets the last dribble from the hose during a drought. Now amplify that by a factor of your entire annual food supply. It highlights just how critical this resource was. Historians still argue whether these water disputes fostered stronger community bonds through shared problem-solving, or if they were a constant source of underlying tension and potential conflict between families or even neighboring villages. Both scenarios undoubtedly played out at different times. The sounds of water are ever present, the gentle gurgle of the stream, the soft lapping as it enters a paddy, the occasional splash as you step into a freshly flooded section. You learn to read the water, its flow rate, its clarity, its temperature, understanding what it means for the health of your crops. A sudden rush of muddy water after a heavy rain might mean a breach in an upstream dike, requiring immediate communal attention. A slow trickle in a dry season could signal a need for rationing. The very landscape of the village is shaped by this need for water management. The terraced paddies, rising in gentle steps up a hillside, are not just aesthetically pleasing. They are a practical way to manage water flow on sloping terrain, allowing gravity to do much of the work. The earthen dikes, meticulously maintained, aren't just boundaries. They are crucial conduits and barriers. You learn to respect the power of water, both its life-giving potential and its destructive force during floods or droughts. It's a constant dance with the elements, a subtle art of manipulation to ensure survival. And honestly, after spending hours ensuring everyone gets their fair share of water, you'd probably be pretty annoyed if someone then decided to use it to fill a swimming pool. As the afternoon wears on and the sun begins its slow descent, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, the focus in your medieval Japanese village subtly shifts. The intensity of fieldwork eases and communal life transitions towards evening preparations. This isn't a sudden stop, but a gradual winding down, a series of familiar routines that prepare the village for the quiet of the night. Amastream. Historical fact is that daily life was largely dictated by natural light. With no widespread electricity, work began at dawn and typically ceased around dusk. This meant that the evening hours, while still productive, were less about strenuous physical labor and more about domestic tasks, communal gatherings, and preparing for the next day. The rhythm of your life is deeply intertwined with the sun's journey across the sky. You or your siblings might be dispatched to fetch more firewood from the communal woodpile, ensuring there's enough fuel for the irori, for the evening meal, and to keep embers alive overnight. This isn't just a chore. It's an important contribution to the household, ensuring warmth and the ability to cook. You might also help in gathering any tools left in the fields, carefully cleaning them and putting them away to prevent rust or damage. Every tool is valuable, and its care is paramount. A quirky tidbit: as evening approaches, you might notice a subtle change in the sounds of the village. The earlier sounds of distant hammering or the shouts from the paddies fade, replaced by the gentler sounds of domesticity. The rhythmic thump-thump of rice being pounded for the evening meal. Perhaps the soft murmuring of conversations drifting from neighboring homes, and the occasional laughter of children still playing their final games before being called in. There might even be the distinct smell of wood smoke from many irori now being stoked for dinner, mixing with the scent of cooking food. It's a comforting, predictable symphony of an unwinding day. Historians still argue whether the perceived quietness of medieval Japanese villages compared to, say, bustling European towns was due to cultural factors or simply a reflection of different population densities and technological limitations. Regardless, the tranquil atmosphere as dusk descends is palpable. Chopping them with a sharp knife or meticulously washing rice. Assist by grinding grains with a small hand mill or sorting through gathered wild herbs. These tasks are performed with a quiet efficiency, honed by years of repetition. There's a sense of anticipation for the evening meal, the largest and often most communal of the day. You might also see neighbors visiting each other, perhaps exchanging news or borrowing a small item. These aren't long, drawn-out affairs. They are brief, functional interactions, reinforcing the social bonds of the village before everyone retreats into their homes for the night. The light outside fades rapidly once the sun dips below the horizon, emphasizing the need to get things done before darkness truly settles in. It's a gentle push towards the domestic haven of your home, a transition from the communal outdoor world to the intimate family sphere. And honestly, after a day of sloshing through mud, the thought of simply sitting down and eating something warm is probably the most exciting thing you can imagine. With the evening preparations completed and the soft glow of the aurora illuminating your home, it's finally time for the evening meal. This isn't just about satisfying hunger. It's the anchor of the day, a moment for the family to gather, share, and connect after hours of separate labors. It's often the most substantial meal, offering warmth and replenishment. A mainstream historical fact is that while rice remains central, the evening meal often featured a greater variety of accompanying dishes than breakfast or lunch. This might include stewed vegetables, often simmered in a light broth, or perhaps a small portion of fish if the village was near a river or coast, or if a traveling fishmonger had passed through that day. Protein might also come from soybeans, in various forms, like tofu if it was made locally, or more miso. Meat was generally a rarity for the common villager, reserved for special occasions or derived from hunting wild game, which wasn't a daily certainty. You take your place around the low table, perhaps on a flat cushion zabat. The air is filled with the comforting aromas of simmering broth, steamed rice, and the faint, ever-present scent of wood smoke, of simmered vegetables or pickles. There's a quiet dignity to the meal, a sense of gratitude for the food that sustains you. You might hear the gentle clink of ceramic bowls as they are set down, or the soft slurping of soup. A quirky tidbit is the etiquette surrounding the meal, which, even in a humble village setting, would be observed. You wouldn't just dive in. There might be a short, silent moment of appreciation before eating, and you'd use chopsticks with a certain decorum, avoiding pointing them or sticking them upright in your rice bowl, a gesture associated with funerals, so a definite no-no. This isn't about rigid formality, but about respect for the food and for those with whom you are sharing it. Imagine trying to get your modern teenager to observe that level of quiet respect at the dinner table. It'd be a challenge. Historians still argue whether such detailed mealtime etiquette permeated all levels of medieval Japanese society, or if it was more strictly adhered to within samurai or noble households, with villagers perhaps being a bit more relaxed. However, a general sense of propriety certainly existed. The conversation, if any, is subdued. Perhaps updates on the day's work in the fields, a discussion about the weather forecast for tomorrow, or news from a neighboring family. It's not boisterous chatter, but a gentle exchange, a way to process the day and reaffirm family bonds. You might notice your father or grandfather quietly enjoying their sake if it was a good harvest year and some had been brewed or acquired. It's a moment of collective relaxation, a chance to simply be with your closest kin after the meal. You might help with the cleanup, washing the few dishes in a basin of water warmed over the aroma. There are no dishwashers, obviously, so every pot and bowl is scrubbed by hand, using perhaps ash as an abrasive. The leftovers, if any, are carefully stored or prepared for the next day, as nothing goes to waste. The evening meal provides not just physical nourishment, but a sense of closure to the productive part of the day, a transition towards rest and reflection. It's a simple, profound satisfaction, knowing you've worked hard and now you are fed, warm and safe within the embrace of your family. As the last vestiges of the evening meal are cleared away, and the eerie fire settles into a comforting glow, the sounds of the medieval Japanese village outside begin to fade into a gentle hum. This is the time for storytelling and lore, a cherished tradition that bridges generations, entertains without electricity, and transmits the wisdom, history, and values of the community. A mainstream historical fact is that oral tradition played an incredibly significant role in pre-modern societies lacking widespread literacy or mass media. Before books were common or accessible, stories were the primary means of entertainment, education, and cultural preservation. For villagers, these tales often revolved around local deities, historical events relevant to their region, moral fables, or even humorous anecdotes about eccentric characters. These stories weren't just for children, they were for everyone, binding the community together through shared narratives. You might gather around the Iriri with your family, perhaps joined by a grandparent or an elder relative whose voices, weathered by time, are perfect for spinning these threads of narrative. The flickering firelight casts dancing shadows on the shoshi screens, adding a dramatic flair to the proceedings. There's no screen glow, no distractions from outside. Your imagination is your only guide. A quirky tidbit about this storytelling tradition is the sheer variety of creatures that populated Japanese folklore. Beyond the well-known Oni demons or Kitsune fox spirits, there were countless localized yokai, supernatural beings, often mischievous or ambivalent, who inhabited the natural world. Your elder might tell a tale of a mischievous kappa, a water imp who loves cucumbers and challenges people to sumo wrestling. These stories weren't just scary or fantastical. They often carried subtle moral lessons about respecting nature, humility, or the consequences of greed. Historians still argue whether the proliferation of these specific yokai stories reflected a deep animistic belief system, or simply served as allegorical tools to explain the unexplainable or enforce social norms in a whimsical way. You listen intently, your mind painting vivid pictures. The stories might be about the fierce local samurai who once protected the village, or the wisdom of a long-dead abbot from the nearby temple. Some tales might explain natural phenomena, like why the river curves a certain way, or why a particular mountain is considered sacred. There are also simple, gently humorous tales that elicit soft chuckles, providing a welcome lightness after a day of hard work. The humor is often observational, a gentle jab at human foibles rather than outright slapstick. Sometimes the stories aren't just told, they're performed. An elder might use their voice to create different characters, their hands to mimic movements, bringing the narrative to life in a way that modern audiobooks can only aspire to. You learn not just the plot, but the nuances of delivery, the rhythm of the language, and the importance of a well-timed pause. These evenings are not just entertainment. They are a vital part of your education, instilling cultural values and a sense of belonging. The quiet, shared experience of listening by the warm aurora creates a deep, enduring bond, a feeling of continuity with generations past. And honestly, it beats scrolling through endless TikToks for mindless amusement, that as the evening deepens and the last embers of the aurora begin to fade, thoughts turn from stories to personal comfort and cleanliness. In your medieval Japanese village, bathing and hygiene are surprisingly well-established routines, far from the stereotypical image of medieval squalor often painted in Western contexts. While you won't find a shower or a bathtub with running hot water, even among commoners, unlike parts of medieval Europe where bathing might be less frequent, communal bathing was a common practice. This wasn't just about removing dirt, it was also about purification, both spiritual and physical. For a villager, this often meant a trip to the local furo or bathhouse, or perhaps a large, shared wooden tub within a cluster of homes, heated over a separate fire. Imagine, as the evening chill sets in, the prospect of a warm bath is incredibly inviting. You'd then make your way to the designated bathing spot. This might be a simple wooden structure with a large communal tub, or sometimes, particularly in warmer months, a quick rinse in a nearby stream or river after a long day in the fields. The point is, cleanliness is valued. A quirky tidbit about these communal baths is the typical routine. You wouldn't get into the hot water tub itself dirty. Instead, you'd wash and rinse yourself thoroughly outside the tub. Only once clean would you then enter the shared hot water to soak and relax. This custom, still observed in modern Japanese onsen and public baths, highlights a profound respect for communal cleanliness and shared resources. Historians still argue whether this practice originated purely from practical hygiene, preventing the spread of disease in shared water, or if it had deeper roots in Shinto purification rituals, emphasizing spiritual purity before entering a communal space. It was likely a blend of both. The sensation of the warm water seeping into your tired muscles after a day of labor in the fields is pure bliss. The steam rises around you, carrying the subtle scent of wet wood and warm water. There's a quiet camaraderie among those sharing the bath, a shared sense of relief and relaxation. Conversation is often low, or sometimes completely absent, as everyone simply unwinds. It's a meditative experience, a chance to shed the day's grime and worries. Beyond bathing, other hygiene practices are ingrained. You'd likely clean your teeth using a finger or a twig rubbed with salt or ash. Your nails would be kept short to prevent dirt accumulation. Clothing, though simple, would be washed regularly in the stream or by hand, then hung to dry in the sun. This isn't a world of pristine whites, but there's a persistent effort to maintain personal and household cleanliness. It speaks to a subtle, underlying aesthetic and a practical understanding of health, even without modern scientific knowledge. And honestly, after hours in a muddy paddy, a good soak sounds like the best invention ever. With your body cleansed and relaxed from the evening bath, the final act of your medieval Japanese day is sleeping arrangements. Unlike the multi-room houses of modern times, your home is designed for flexibility, with spaces that transform from daytime living areas to nighttime sleeping quarters. This adaptability is key to maximizing the utility of a relatively small dwelling. A mainstream historical fact is that most commoner homes in medieval Japan, including yours, were characterized by open, multi-purpose rooms separated by sliding shoshi paper screens and fusuma thicker, opaque sliding doors. There were no fixed bedrooms with permanent beds. Instead, sleeping futon, as we discussed earlier, though not quite the same as modern versions, would be rolled out onto the tatami mats at night and then rolled away and stored in closets. Oshir during the day. This allowed the same space to serve as a dining area, a workspace, and then a sleeping area. Imagine the transformation. The low table used for dinner might be moved to the side, or perhaps you gather around the irori for a final few moments of warmth. Then, from the oshir, your family carefully pulls out the futons. These aren't the thick, plush futons you might find in a modern Japanese department store. They are simpler, perhaps filled with cotton, straw, or even dried leaves, but still designed to provide a layer of comfort and insulation from the cool tatami floor. You help lay out the individual futons, perhaps side by side, on the large tatami area, creating a communal sleeping space for the family. A quirky tidbit is the concept of a shared sleeping space, not just being about warmth or practicality, but also about a sense of familial security. In a world where dangers, both natural and human, were ever present, sleeping close together offered a sense of protection and reassurance. There's a quiet intimacy in hearing the soft breathing of your family members as you drift off to sleep. This communal sleeping arrangement was typical, a stark contrast to the modern Western emphasis on individual bedrooms and personal space from an early age. Historians still argue whether this close-knit sleeping arrangement fostered stronger family bonds, or if it occasionally led to a lack of individual privacy that might be challenging to modern sensibilities. For you, it's simply the way things are. A comforting routine. You might pull a simple blanket or quilt over yourself, made perhaps of patched fabric or thin layers of cotton. There's no central heating, so the warmth provided by your shared body heat and the residual warmth from the irori is essential, especially during colder months. The light from the irori gradually fades as the embers die down, plunging the room into near darkness, save for the soft glow from outside. If there's a moon dot, you settle onto your futon, feeling the familiar texture of the woven tatami beneath the thin mattress. The air is cool but not cold, and the gentle sounds of the house settling for the night begin to lull you. There are no streetlights filtering through the windows, no buzzing electronics, just the profound quiet of a world lit only by nature. It's a return to simplicity, a stripping away of all the artificial complexities of modern life, leaving only the essential comforts of shelter, family, and the promise of rest. You close your eyes, feeling the exhaustion of a day spent in honest labor, and prepare to surrender to the deep, natural sleep that comes from a life lived in harmony with the sun and the soil. As you settle onto your futon, the day's honest labor weighing gently on your limbs, The final act of your medieval Japanese day unfolds, listening to the nighttime sounds of the village. The human world has largely quieted, but nature and the subtle echoes of human life continue their gentle symphony, lulling you into a deep and restful sleep. A mainstream historical fact is the profound quietness of pre-industrial nights. Without the constant hum of electricity, vehicles, and distant urban noise, the natural soundscape was far more dominant. For you, this means a connection to the environment that modern city dwellers rarely experience. Every rustle of leaves, every distant animal call is amplified and understood. You lie there, eyes closed, feeling the subtle presence of your family sleeping beside you. The residual warmth from the irory, now just a faint, dying ember, provides a last whisper of comfort. The first sounds you might notice are the very close ones, the soft, rhythmic breathing of your family members, a gentle snore from your father, or the quiet shift of a sleeping child. These are comforting, reassuring sounds that speak of safety and togetherness. A quirky tidbit is the surprisingly active nocturnal world just beyond your thin walls. You might hear the chirping of crickets, a constant lullaby in warmer months, perhaps the croaking of frogs from the rice paddies, or the distant hoot of an owl from the nearby forest. These aren't alarming sounds. They are simply the background chorus of nature, a reminder that the world continues its cycle even as you rest. You might even hear the quiet scuttling of a mouse in the eaves, a familiar, if sometimes unwelcome, presence that reminds you of the constant battle against nature's smaller inhabitants. Historians still argue whether medieval villagers developed a heightened sense of hearing due to the absence of modern noise pollution, or if their understanding of natural sounds was simply more critical for survival and daily life than for us today. As the night deepens, the sounds become softer, more ethereal. The gentle rustle of wind through the thatch roof, a sighing sound that is both ancient and comforting. The whisper of bamboo groves swaying outside, a rhythmic, almost hypnotic swish. You might occasionally hear the distinct, if distant, bark of a village dog, or the soft grunt of a boar foraging in the distant woods, sounds that signal the wildness just beyond the cultivated fields. The quietness is not an empty void. It is a rich tapestry of subtle auditory details that guide your transition from wakefulness to slumber. There's no artificial light pollution, so the darkness is profound, enhancing your other senses. You smell the clean, damp earth, the faint lingering scent of wood smoke, and the subtle fragrance of the tatami mats. It's a sensory immersion, drawing you deeper into the quietude of the medieval night. You breathe deeply, feeling the peacefulness of the moment. The worries of the day, the success of the harvest, the mending of a tool, the health of a family member begin to recede. Your body, tired from honest labor, feels heavy and ready for rest. You are safe within your simple home, surrounded by your family, connected to the ancient rhythms of the earth. The world outside continues its slow, gentle turn, but for now, your part in it is done. The soft chorus of the night becomes your lullaby, pulling you deeper and deeper into a restorative, seamless drone, a gentle hum that carries you further away. The distinct chirps and rustles soften, becoming indistinguishable, a hazy, comforting wash of ambient noise. You feel your muscles fully relax, sinking into the futon, becoming one with the quiet space. The warmth from the long-dead Iruri is replaced by an internal glow, a peaceful contentment. There's nothing more to do, nowhere else to be. Just the soft, enveloping quiet, a serene blanket woven from the sounds of a sleeping world. You are entirely at peace, drifting, drifting.